The weather's too nice. I had to get outside. It's beautiful out there. I hope you've been getting a lot of outdoor time this summer. We are at the midpoint of the year, and I wanted to talk to you guys about 2022 in the year of video games. And I've got a list of my favorite games of the year so far. Of course, there's a lot of time still ahead of us, a lot of big releases headed our way, but I've got a top 10 list of my favorite games of 2022. We're going to start with number 10, which is Dying Light 2 Stay Human. And I know that this was maybe a little bit underwhelming because I am a pretty big fan of the first Dying Light, and I was blown away by the presentation of Dying Light 2 Stay Human at E3 a few years back, and it was not as good as I hoped, but it's still loaded with so much fun gameplay. It's just a total blast to run around these cities and take care of zombies and try to stay away from the big mega zombies and the hordes that come after you at night. There's all kinds of cool power-ups and new abilities, the parkour that's presented in this game, and of course all of the beautiful technological touches that Techland put into this game are really fun to enjoy if you've got a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox Series X or a crankin' PC that you can play this game on. It is a feast for the eyes, not just a zombie feasting on human flesh feast, by the way, but it's just fun to play. It may not have the best story. There's some weird kind of tangents and, interesting types of characters, and sometimes the dialogue goes on too long, but when you get into the gameplay, when you're leaping off of buildings and using the hang glider and doing all the zipline stuff and just taking care of the enemies in so many cool and satisfying ways, this game rocks. That's why Dying Light 2 is number 10 on my list. Number 9 is Tunic, which I first experienced on the Xbox. That was a nice surprise that it just popped up on Game Pass. Good move, Xbox. It's also out on PC, so I played a little bit of this on Steam Deck. It's also on the PlayStation. I'm sure this will eventually hit the Switch as well. This is a wonderful Zelda-alike. It's an isometric experience, and there's all kinds of beautiful mystery in here. One of my favorite things about this game is that you don't know what the hell is going on. You're this cute little fox character, and you're just hitting people with sticks to begin with, and then eventually you get a pretty decent sword that can slice away some of the grass and the bushes. We've seen that mechanic before. And then suddenly all kinds of new mystery starts to unravel, and you're dealing with the spirit realm. And the coolest thing is you're finding pages of the instruction book, which evokes the classic Nintendo instruction books of yore, stuff that you would find on the Super Nintendo or whatever. And you could flick through the pages of the instruction book and you start to learn a little bit more about what's going on and a lot more about your mechanics and the damage that you can deal out. Now, the thing to consider with this game, and I haven't finished this game because it is very tough. It is a very hard game to play. And I came to this after I'd been playing Elden Ring, and I wanted to relax and enjoy the game, and I couldn't. I was very tense when I played it. That doesn't knock my appreciation for this thing one bit, though. It's beautiful, it's satisfying, and I absolutely think you should play Tunic. It's number 9 on my favorite games of 2022 list so far. The antithesis to Tunic is the very accessible Kirby and the Forgotten Land. There is a more challenging mode in the game, but most of the boss fights and most of the challenge in the game, any player that's watching the Electric Playground is going to be able to handily surpass the game. That doesn't take away any of the enjoyment of the title, though. There's a lot of really cool abilities. The fact that Kirby has this mouthful mode, and he eats cars and becomes a car and can drive around as this little pink car, which is adorable. But my favorite is when Kirby uses the mouthful mode to consume a vending machine and then can shoot out cans of soda at the enemies. I thought that was just so clever. There's lots of other abilities in there, and of course all of Kirby's patented copy abilities that give him all kinds of flexible new opportunities for exploration, but also engagement and gameplay reward for the player. And then, of course, you can also play this a little bit in co-op as well. There's lots of secrets to unlock, lots of gacha balls and collectibles to purchase and find along the way, all the Waddle Dees to save. It's unbelievably rewarding and so beautifully presented. That's the other thing, too. This is easily the best looking of the Kirby games, and there's been a ton of them, and there's been a ton of great-looking Kirby games, but I think this is the most beautiful of them all. I love Kirby and the Forgotten Land. That's why it's number 8 on my list. I didn't really want to dig into DLC when I started to put this list together, but Cuphead and the Last Delicious Course had to be the exception. Because the DLC is beautiful and the animation is just outrageously ambitious, and we've never seen anything like it, but it's also a singular experience. Not so much the gameplay. We played run and guns, we played played lots of boss fight modes in lots of really challenging scrolling experiences in the past, but Cuphead just looks magnificent. It looks so special. The thought occurred to me when I was playing the DLC, but also re-experiencing the original Cuphead, wouldn't it be a trip to have a time machine and go back in time and to present this game on the Nintendo Switch to Walt Disney and just watch his head explode? We're playing a cartoon, and it's so lovingly crafted, and there's so much attention to detail. We've waited 5 years for this DLC, and in that time, there's been nothing like Cuphead. Cuphead stands alone, and it's just a beautiful masterwork. I suck at it. I heartily admit that. I cannot get far in the game. I'll spend all day working on a boss, but I feel so overjoyed when I do beat one of these bosses and progress in the game, mostly because the rewards are plentiful. It's beautiful. And on top of the gorgeous visuals, the music and that sense of place and time and the nostalgia it evokes and the love that just seeps out of the game is palpable and wonderful. And that's why Cuphead needs to be celebrated. And the DLC ended up at number 7 on my list. Number 6 is Pokemon Legends Arceus. I am so impressed by what the Pokemon Company put together with this thing. It's not quite open world. You can't just go everywhere, but the environments are so expansive and there's so many cool little surprises. It's fun to explore. It may not be the most revolutionary Pokemon game that we can imagine, but it's edging closer to that. It's really lovely. There's lots of cool things to explore, lots of great Pokemon to collect and interesting characters to meet. Some of them you battle with, some of them you recruit back to your team. I really enjoyed this title. Now, I have to say that my daughter, who is becoming a bit of a Pokemaniac, much preferred Pokemon Sword and Shield, but that's kind of the cool thing with Pokemon. They have got a lot of games that kind of stay tried and true to the foundations of this franchise or the roots of this franchise, and then every once in a while they take some pretty interesting steps, like they did with Pokemon Legends Arceus. Number 5 on my list is Horizon Forbidden West, and man, it was a blast to jump into the boots of Aloy and traverse westward and deal with all kinds of new robotic enemies and animals and all of the different people that you meet, some of them with some really interesting abilities and lots of really cool side quests and missions. Really, the star of the show of this game is the incredible environments that Guerrilla Games put together for us. Lots of nooks and crannies and caves to examine and explore, lots of mysteries to kind of unravel and scan, and you're trying to figure out how it's all connected and who these characters are that seem to have technology that's way more advanced than you could ever imagine. It's a stunning game, and what a world Guerrilla built for us. I'm still in awe that this is the company that brought us Killzone, and then they shifted focus and made such an epic action RPG franchise that is so satisfying and so near the top of the list for this genre. I do have the caveat, though, that you don't want to play this one first. You want to play Zero Dawn first and then jump into this, because it's a continuation of the story, and you want to get into the whole headspace of it, but you're not going to be disappointed with either game. And this is all coming from a guy that hasn't been able to jump back in since they've done the graphical upgrade patch, because I know a lot of tuning and tweaking has gone on with Horizon Forbidden West, but this was chef's kiss of a beautiful game on PlayStation 5. Number 4 on my list is another tough but incredibly satisfying game. It's called Sifu. It's out for the PlayStation platforms. It's also out on PC. I'm almost positive that this is a title that might appear on other platforms down the road, but holy crap, is this a fun game to play. It's a modern update on the brawlers that we used to love in 16-bit form, the scrolling brawlers, but this is a three-dimensional experience that I think borrows liberally from movies like John Wick and television shows like Daredevil. There's a lot of corridor brawling that you get into. There's a lot of weapons-based combat that you get into. You'll pick up bottles and throw them at bad guys and use pipes and sticks and all kinds of things that you find along the way to take out the goons that you'll find in nightclubs and in back alleys, but then eventually you'll fight some really challenging bosses. The difficulty ramps in this game may be a little bit frustrating, but there's so much cool attention to detail and so many awesome little touches and nuances, all the upgrade trees that you get with the character, and all of the gorgeous environmental touches that you just are rewarded with the further that you progress into the game. It's not especially long, but holy crap, it's fun, and that's why Sifu is number 4 on my list. Number 3 on my list of favorite games of 2022 so far, bing, is LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. This is a game that we waited way too long for. It really should would have come out with the Rise of Skywalker to kind of, deal with the celebration of that game, concluding everything. I put celebration in quotes because I know it wasn't for everybody, but this is a game for everybody. Anybody that's ever enjoyed anything to do with Star Wars, you're going to find lots of really cool elements in here. Of course, you've got all kinds of worlds to explore. If it was in any of the 3 trilogies, there's some kind of level or some kind of element that has been Lego-ized and put into this game, and there's lots of in-jokes and subtleties to pick up along the way. There's a tremendous amount of cool DLC in there, so if you want to play as the Mandalorian and have Baby Yoda following you, you can do that in this title. The levels are meant to be replayed with different characters. There's lots of secrets, but the tuning on the gameplay was really appreciated. This is a franchise, the Lego games, that have kind of stuck to a pattern over the years, and there's been a familiarity with them. Even if the franchise that these games have been based on was different, you could kind of jump into each of them and feel like you were playing a lot of the same types of experience. This one has elements of that for sure. It's not like they completely abandoned all the past work. And let's face it, there's been excellent Lego games along the way, but this is just tuned and polished and modernized, so it feels a lot more appropriate for any type of player. You don't have to be like a Lego game savant to get a ton of fun out of this. And it's just gorgeous as well, especially if you're running on a super powerful machine like the Xbox Series X or the PlayStation 5. Love Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. Number 2 on my list, we're getting close to the top, is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. I think I almost could have called this one when it was announced. I was so elated and so excited. I've been one of those, goofy guys on Twitter that's been saying to the video game industry, or to anybody that would listen, we need more two-dimensional scrolling brawlers. Let's bring back some 2D superhero games. Come on, let's get them. And then finally, Tribute Games and Dotemu worked out the deal with Nickelodeon and whoever owns the Turtles license and said, we're going to go back and revisit these characters in a way that we're all familiar with if we enjoyed the Turtles back through the 90s, if we played Turtles games on the NES, the Super Nintendo, or the arcade. This is going to feel like that type of an experience, and it does. And it's really tuned and really polished, but it's also very evocative of the glory days of 16-bit side-scrolling superhero experiences, which I happen to adore, and I talk about them all the time. And so for me, in 2022, to play a brand new game made with this amount of detail and this much finesse and this much replayability and this much love for the material is just profound. This might be a kind of a disposable game for some people out there, or a bit of a throwaway type of experience, or something that just banks on nostalgia a little bit too much. But for me, it validates the work that was being put into the video game industry for a very long time that just seems to have been scrubbed off the face of the earth. It's like the games industry pivoted to 3D and said this 2D stuff doesn't matter anymore, and that's total BS, as is exemplified in this wonderful game, which you can play with up to 6 people. You can play as April O'Neil, you can play as Casey Jones, you can play as Master Splinter. There's lots of nice little touches and secrets in there. I hope there's more. I hope there's a new trend. I would love to see something like this with the Avengers or Batman or what have you. There's lots of other characters that we could, and franchises that we could make really cool scrolling games like this. I would also love to see a sequel or DLC, but for now I'm still in love and in awe of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. That's why it's number 2. And that leaves us with number 1 on the list, and I know you know what it is. It's Elden Ring from Software and Bandai Namco. This is a Souls-like game from the company that brought us Dark Souls, and not only made a gaming franchise, but a whole genre. And of course, this game takes that initial Souls-like experience and then opens it up into this beautiful open world with tons of cascading mysteries, all kinds of head-scratching moments and boss encounters and different ghoulish creatures that you have to face and fight, and in my case, run away from, because this is an incredibly challenging game. But the thing that I appreciate the most about this game is that even though it doesn't hold your hand, and even though it expects and demands a lot of attention from you and a lot of talents from you, it's also kind of forgiving in that you can walk away from a battle and then go race off in another direction, explore some castle or ruins or something, find some cool weapons, maybe fight a lesser powerful mini boss, collect their weapon or their magic power, and then inch your way along and keep re-exploring. So I found this game the most accessible of any of these Souls-like games, which I've never had the patience to become proficient at. I try them all, I appreciate them all, but they all just kick my ass so much I eventually go, okay, I'm out. But with Elden Ring, I've never said that. I haven't beat it yet. There's still tons of things to do, but as you can tell from this list of titles and the other ones that I've been playing, I've been busy playing a ton of different games to talk about them on the shows all the time. So I haven't gone back and completed everything in Elden Ring by any stretch of the imagination, but I've played enough of it to see that this is easily the best game of the year so far, and I don't know how it won't be the very best of the year in 2022. That's why Elden Ring is number 1 on my list. I did also have some runners-up, and this was mostly about games that I touched and played for a bit, but I haven't really spent tons of time with yet. Games like The Quarry, which is the brand new narrative-based horror movie type experience with lots of cool different characters and every choice matters. It's got a beautiful look to it, and they've employed lots of really cool real-life actors like Ted Raimi and Siobhan Williams, who was a guest on EP not too long ago, and I'm definitely going to get her back on the show soon. I've enjoyed what I've played of The Quarry, but I didn't play enough of it that I could add it to this list. Same goes for Rogue Legacy 2, which has become almost a staple on the Steam Deck. This is, obviously an upgraded sequel to the phenomenal Rogue Legacy 1, which employs a lot of classic 2D action adventuring and throws in the roguelike elements in there. So when you die, you basically have to start again, but you're creating descendants of your character. And they start off their adventure with all kinds of interesting idiosyncrasies, and their adventure is very different from the one that you start off in. One of the main pillars of Rogue Legacy is that every time you enter these dungeons and castles and things, it's a completely different map. It's super cool, and I've played a little bit of it, and I love it, but I haven't played enough that I could add it to my list. And then there's games like MLB The Show 22, which I have played a ton of, but I think you know what you get with this game. One of the cool things is that they brought this franchise. Sony published a game for Nintendo Switch, and so you could play it on any of the platforms. There was lots of cross-saving and the ability to play it anywhere and play against people on different platforms, which is super cool. Always enjoy the MLB The Show games, and 22 is gorgeous and feature-rich. Definitely has lots of microtransactions, but it's an excellent baseball game. I've also been loving the Capcom Fighting Collection, which serves up 5 different Darkstalkers games, which is really cool. I've always loved that fighting franchise, but there's also awesome little highlights in there like Cyberbots, which I'd never played before, a bunch of robots fighting each other, and Red Earth is super cool. There's also a Street Fighter puzzle game in there too. Really am enjoying the Capcom Fighting Collection. I've been playing it a ton on the Switch. It's a terrific pickup, but it's out for every platform, and it's awesome. And another collection that I had a ton of fun with is the Wonder Boy collection, which has some Master System, some arcade and Genesis ports of classic Wonder Boy games, which I didn't ever play back then. I streamed a bunch of this and had a really good time with it. In is the publisher, and they're doing such cool work finding somewhat obscure or some games that have been forgotten a little bit and bringing them back onto modern platforms like the Switch. Love the Wonder Boy collection. If you've got any kind of affinity for the golden days of Sega, or if you remember this franchise, or if you just want to dig into the history of these types of games, definitely check out the Wonder Boy collection. It's super cool. And then there's a couple of really fantastic indie games as well. Infernax, which is a sprite-based, pixelated, but super violent action-adventure game with magic powers and medieval type weapons and gruesome monsters to take care of. I streamed some of that game as well, and I just had a blast. I think the community was really impressed watching this title too. Infernax is an absolute standout, and it's great again on the Steam Deck. Another indie game that's awesome on the Steam Deck is Card Shark, where you are learning all kinds of abilities to cheat at cards and fool people and win lots of money. You're going into different towns and different mansions and things like that, and you're basically using your card abilities to rob from the rich and scam people. And you've got an accomplice and you don't want to give too much away, but very clever gameplay in there. Lots of cool narrative choices as well. Card Shark is amazing. And finally, a VR game that absolutely could have been in my top 10 list. I love this game. I want to play it again on the Oculus Quest 2, but I played it on the PlayStation VR platform. Had a great time with Moss Book 2. Beautiful game. It's awesome to control Quill as she's cruising around and taking care of the puzzles and the monsters and the boss fights that she's getting into. Gorgeous environments, really clever hooks, and some emotional changes in the narrative with the gameplay. Very impressive title. It's a must-buy if you are a big PSVR fan, and I'll let you know about the Quest 2 version as soon as I play it. But Moss Book 2 is very special. So, as you can tell, we've had an incredible beginning of 2022. I'm going to do another video where I look ahead at some of the bigger releases and some of the things that are interesting to me. Of course, I would love to hear any of the titles that I may have missed in this list in the comments down below. Let me know about that. And I will see you soon. And until I do, play forever.